Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and today I've got Tim Derling, Ryan Gavalier, and John Clauser here, and today we're going to look at the first two April Wine albums, the self-titled album from 1971 and On Record from 1972. But before we get started, let's look at some upcoming and current programming on the channel. Check out the first episode in This Is Power Pop, where the panel looks at the first Raspberries album from 1972. Next month, we look at the Plimsouls. In October, the band Fountains of Wayne. Todd, Armando, Davy, and I looked at ABC's legendary album, The Lexicon of Love. This 1982 debut album by the English pop band ABC set the world and our panel on fire, so please check it out. Next month, we will be taking a look at Beauty Stab from 1983. Also, Tom Fox joins me soon to take a look at our top two favorite tracks from the first four Morrissey albums. And without any further ado, let's get to our panel into April Wine. Hey, this is Grant with Grant's Rock Warehouse, and today we've got three special guests. I've got Tim Derling, I've got John Clauser, and Ryan Gavalier. And today we're looking at April Wine's first album from 1971 and the second album, On Record from 1972. This is an ongoing April Wine series for anyone who hasn't seen this. Originally, this wasn't going to be a series. We were just going to look at those classic April Wine albums. So I guess it was a mini series, but I couldn't leave it well enough alone. So we're doing the whole damn catalog. So now we're kind of doing it bass backwards, but we've already captured that classic period. So you can go ahead and check those episodes out. They're already up there. But now we're going to start at the beginning and dissect this. Now, these albums are way different than anything that came after. This is basically a totally different band that, after the third album, they were gone. But I'm just going to turn it over to Tim Derling and let him start out like we always do with this April Wine series. Tim, take it away.
Thanks, Grant. It's so much fun talking about this band. I'm a big fan, and I'm glad that we're doing the entire catalog. And it just so happens they have the right number of studio albums that we can do these in twos. April Wine originally hailed from Eastern Canada, as where I'm sitting here right now. They're from the Halifax area, Nova Scotia. I'm in New Brunswick, which is the next province over. And it took them a long time to get well known in the States. It took them about 7-8 years. In Canada, they were pretty big as of the second album, which I'll talk about. But the first album, I'm pretty sure, was only released in Canada. I don't think it ever was released internationally. It's got one of the worst album covers ever, just self-titled, 1971. And I have to, I know people that know where I'm going with this. I mean, he's not going to mention that, is he? Yes, I am going to mention this. There's a rumor that was from like long ago, many times debunked, that these were Anne Murray's feet. They are not. Now, first of all, not only do those look like women's feet to you, second of all, do those look like a young person's feet to you? I don't know whose feet they are. I don't care. It's a terrible album cover. Okay. I can't imagine walking into a record store in 1971 saying, yeah, I'm taking that one home. Look at that. That's got to be a rocker. It's got feet on the cover, for crying out loud. The other thing I have to say about it is that, as Grant mentioned, this is pretty much a completely different band. It's Miles Goodwin and the Henmans, and I can never keep straight in my head which Henmans were brothers and which one was a cousin. I know that Jimmy Henman was the bass player, Richie Henman was the drummer, and David Henman was another guitar player. Two of those guys are brothers, one's a cousin. I can't keep them mixed up. And then Miles Goodwin. And what I think is really cool is on the back cover here, I don't know how well it'll show up, but it says Miles Goodwin, vocals, guitar, born in Woodstock, New Brunswick, not the other one. I, too, was born in Woodstock, New Brunswick. That's my hometown. That's where I grew up, and it's about a half an hour away from where I am now. Now, Miles Goodwin did not live there. As the story goes, his parents were just passing through. But for an area that's, we're not known for a lot of like worldwide classic rock, landmarks, that's a pretty cool one. But that's one of the more exciting parts of this album for me. I really don't care for this album that much. It is I only listened to it for the first time in years because as a collector I try to find everything by a band, and that's just
Mhm.
how I try to complete collections. So it was kind of bought out of necessity. Um, Far and away, the song I like the best on here is Fast Train, which was the single off of this album, and it's the only one that ever made hits compilations. It's a cool song. It's got a cool little riff in the middle of it, which they wisely recycled for their next album. Well, we'll get to that.
Mhm.
Um, and it's one of the few that was written and sung by Miles. So it's one of the few songs that you might hear and think, "Hey, that sounds like it might be April Wine." That's really it. Nothing else in this album comes at you, and you'd think, "Okay, that's got to be April Wine." It's very, very moldy sounding, like it's old and not classic. It's old and not vintage. When I think about albums that came out in 1971,
Mhm.
like Led Zeppelin 4 and Yes, Fragile and Deep Purple Fireball and Alice Cooper, Love It to Death and Killer, those are vintage albums. This is not. This is a very, very dated sounding. It's folksy in places. I don't know who the other singers are other than their Henmans. Um, and really, the only other song that I paid much attention to on this album, but it's almost for novelty value, is the seventh track called Wench, because it sounds like they were trying to sound like Led Zeppelin. It sounds like they're trying to rewrite Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. And I don't know if it's Miles singing or not, but it's definitely sounds like someone's trying to imitate Robert Plant, which, I mean, plenty of people have tried to rip off Led Zeppelin, but this is one of the earlier examples I can think of it because they'd only been around for a couple of years at this point. So
Jim
I'm not a big fan of this album at all.
Jim Henman sang that
Jim
track.
Henman sang that
Mhm.
one. Also, this would never make it in today's because there's a Seven Up sign in the back, a very old Seven Up sign in the background, and that would have had to have been taken out because, if you think about a few years later when Hugh Syme designed the Permanent Waves album cover, they had to take the Coca-Cola sign off of it.
Mhm.
Um, in all serious though, are we rating these albums out of 5, Grant?
You can do about a 5 or out of 10. I don't care.
Okay,
We
well,
can do them both.
I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 or a 4 out of 10.
Well, that's interesting because that's what the All Music guy gave
I
it. They
think
gave
it's
it
a I think
2 out
it's
of 5.
yeah, I think it's a pretty weak album, and I'm happy to say they only got better from here, and that's the
Mhm.
best thing because that's better than coming out with everything you got on the first album and then not being able to follow it up. Boston. So I like the fact that there was
Mhm.
definitely a slow build with April Wine. So
Mhm.
that brings us to the second album, which has 2 covers and 2 titles. It was the first album to come out internationally. Yeah, in Canada, this is a really, really old cassette. It was
Ooh.
called On Record.
Boy, is that a bad, aren't those bad fonts?
Oh,
Holy
terrible,
crap,
terrible. It was
terrible.
on. This was on a. They were on Aquarius Records, and at the time, this appears to be a London Records distribution from the looks of
Mhm.
it. Um, and in the States, it was the first thing to come out in the States. It was self-titled, so probably a lot of people thought it was their first album, and it had this cover on it. I haven't had this tape too long. This is one of the old ones that comes like with a slipcase, like
Mhm.
a hard plastic, and the songs are in slightly different order, but it's the same album. And this album is the first one that let me see. Jimmy Henman was replaced on bass by Jim Clench, and that was the beginning of them sort of morphing into the April Wine we would know. Jim Clench not only played bass, but he also sang. I don't think he sings any songs on here. He's got a really distinctive voice. He sings
Didn't
songs
he
like,
sang Didn't You?
oh, did he?
And he
Okay.
wrote it. And he wrote that.
Okay.
And Miles is singing Drop Your Guns. And he wrote
Yes.
that.
Yep.
But yeah.
Um, Jim Clench I always thought had a really cool voice. I mean, if people
Mhm.
know Weeping Widow and Ooh What a Night, sadly he's passed away. He died in 2010, and he after April Wine, he went on to a latter day, like later 70s incarnation of BTO. So anyway, so it was a slightly different lineup, and they took that somewhat novel approach of actually putting their faces on the cover, and on the back cover, it's just the reverse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I like the fact that that reissue CD actually uses their actual logo. That's kind of cool.
Mhm.
So this album actually got them some traction in Canada. I don't think the first album did very well at all. Maybe it might have gone gold in Canada on the strength of what came after it, but they scored two pretty big hits off this album, both of which were covers. One, of course, was "You Could Have Been a Lady," which was originally done by Hot Chocolate. So it's kind of a funky kind of song, and it's an April Wine classic. It's just a 3-chord classic. It's got a cool bass line to it. It was their first of 3 top 40 singles that they had in the US. I think it peaked at number 31 or 32. And in Canada, it went all the way to number 1. It's a radio staple to this very day, and it was a concert staple for them. The other song that got a lot of radio airplay is a lesser known Elton John, Bernie Taupin song called "Bad Side of the Moon." And I don't know if this song's on any of Elton John's studio albums. I know it can be found on an early live album, and I want to say that the album was called, I don't know if it was called "Here and There," and I think the lyrics are slightly different, but it's a cool song. It's got a cool bass line in it too. It's even got flute because this is the early 70s. As Grant mentioned, "Drop Your Guns" is a rocker. That's one that survived, a lot of set lists. So when I saw them in 2005, they did that song, and actually they had Brian Greenway sing it, which was kind of cool. And I believe that it's "Work All Day." I could be wrong. I think it's "Work All Day" where they reprise the riff that's in the middle of "Fast Train," that dun da dun da dun da dun da dun da dun, which is kind of the coolest part of the song. They kind of make a song out of that, which is kind of cool. Other than that, it is an improvement over the first album. It's still pretty dated, and there's nothing on here that sounds anything like "Roller" or "I Like to Rock" or "Sign of the Gypsy Queen." So it's still a pretty different band. I mean, they don't have Jerry Mercer or Gary Moffat at this point, so it's still pretty early days for them. And I'm going to give this album a 2.5 out of 5 or a 5 out of 10. So I like the second album a little bit more than the first, but the best was yet to come from April Wine.
Excellent review, Mr. Klauser.
Okay, so to answer your question, Tim, David and Richie were the brothers, and Jim was the cousin.
Thank you.
So
I'll try to remember that. Jim cousin.
My question before we get to John is, whatever happened to the Heinemans? What did they do after this? I have no idea.
David Henman will play the occasional show with Miles Goodwin now.
Oh,
if you follow Miles on Facebook. So he's resurfaced, and I think they're still pretty good friends. I don't know about the other two.
I mean, they never resurfaced in another band or did another project?
There was a band called The Dudes that were signed to Columbia. Brian Greenway was also a member of this band, but I think one of the Henmans might have been in that band. I don't know any songs by that band. I just know that there was a band called The Dudes, and that's without having Wikipedia right in front of me, that's about all I can tell you.
Yeah.
I just wondered,
Yeah, Wikipedia doesn't really tell much about the rest of their history, so they don't even give them a link to that you can click on. So maybe Canadian Wikipedia might have something, but the United States not so much.
We have one Wikipedia. I don't think it's I don't think it's any different. We don't have a Wikipedia.ca.
No,
it's all the same.
Yeah.
All right, John. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so I think I've also seen this called Can. Am I wrong in seeing that somewhere? I think I feel like I've seen this also, but anyway, I don't know why I saw that. But
are you talking about the band Can?
No, this album that sometimes somebody called this April Wine Can, but I don't know. Maybe I just read that somewhere where I could be wrong.
I'm not familiar with that.
I don't. That doesn't ring a bell, but that doesn't mean.
Yeah,
maybe because there's a 7-Up sign on the back.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That could be.
Maybe that's it.
Could be. I really can't add to what Tim said. It just, to me, this album just sounds like it was all over the place. It was like they just threw things together, and that's kind of how everything sounded. There was really no good structure. Yeah. It just seems like they kind of went from these really nice, typical 60s, 70s acoustic sounds, and all of a sudden you go into this bombastic stuff, which was, they just kind of went from one jarring thing to another. It was just kind of, it was just this was an interesting listen.
And it was quite obviously produced on a shoestring budget too. You can hear that.
Very much so. Very, very much so. Like Tim, I'd probably give this about a 2 out of 5, 4 out of 10. I do like the song Wench. I thought that one was good. Song for Mary was pretty. I thought that was a nice, pretty song track for what it was. Fast Train, I thought was very good. Oceana had a very interesting intro. Kind of has at one point you have that almost like a little Genesis kind of feel with that dun, 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 dun. Maybe that's not a good comparison, but it just seemed like just everything was just kind of thrown together. So that's really, I don't really have much to really add to what Tim said there. As far as on record, I found this a lot more enjoyable to listen to than the first album. I really enjoyed this one. Farkas, you have this very Jimmy Page like intro.
I think so too. Yeah.
Very much. It's like Black Mountain Side on
exactly
on steroids. It just seemed to me, like that.
Yeah.
I loved You Could Have Been a Lady. I thought that was a great track. Drop Your Guns, I thought was also really good. Even though Bad Side of the Moon was an Elton John song, I got a feeling more of it had a kind of a feeling all right kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. I hear
a little bit, maybe just a little bit. Refuge, that one of that opening riffs kind of gave me I Can See for Miles.
I was going to say that. I wrote down on my notes, it reminds me of like late 60s Who.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of spots in here where I heard Zeppelin. I heard that kind of out on the tiles kind of vibe. I thought Believe in Me was an interesting song. I thought that was good. Didn't You? I thought was good. There was one song, and I can't remember which one it was, kind of gave me a James Gang feel. I can't think of which song it was that was
Carry On, maybe?
Might have been Carry On. I think that was it. It had that kind of that just to me, it kind of had it just felt like a James Gang song a little bit.
That's what I wrote on there. I couldn't classify it, but I liked that track. And you totally pinpointed it. James Gang. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is like, we're throwing a lot of different bands around when we're talking about it. This is early days. I mean, none of these bands were that old, not even the Who. So this is early days. So yeah, their sound definitely hadn't coalesced. And the other thing about this album, I don't know if it's on all versions, but if you've got a version where in between every track you hear like this violin music, like this old like 30s, 40s radio stereo music, the producer Ralph Murphy put that on there on that second album. The band didn't even know about it until it came out. So if you've only heard some of the songs on compilations, anyone watching this, and then you get the actual album, the song might be fading out, but there's like 15 seconds left of the track, and then you hear this.
I like almost kind of like a moody blues kind of thing.
A little bit. Again, throwing everything against the wall and hoping it sticks. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long after this that Miles Goodwin took the reins and said, "Okay, what kind of band are we going to be?"
Yeah. It just seemed like they were still finding themselves.
Definitely.
Yeah. Very much finding themselves. Yeah. And it's after this album that I think the rest of the Henmans left, because I think the third album's third album's just Miles and then the rest of the guys. So what do I give this? What would I give this? Like I said, this one I enjoyed a lot more than the first one. I would give this probably about a 3.5 out of 5. So about maybe a 7 out of 10 maybe, and that's being generous, but I liked them. I enjoyed this one a lot more than the first one, but the first one's got moments, but it was a tough 35 minutes to listen to at times.
The more I listen to it, the more I like it.
Yeah, and I think it's going to grow on me too.
See, to me, if they'd have kept putting out albums that sounded like this, I don't think I'd have stuck with them.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
Hey, but every band's got to start somewhere.
That's right.
You got a great point. They are one of those bands that continually got better as they went along.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen very often. Usually they, first album, best record. April Wine kept getting better.
Yeah.
But Ryan Gavalier might have a different opinion on that, maybe, based on what I know. So, John, do you have anything else to add? So you're going to give it 3.5, 3.5, and you give the first album what? I'm sorry.
2.
Okay, fair enough. Excellent review. I'm really interested in hearing what Mr. Gavalier has to say, because unless he was pulling my leg last night. Ryan, you're up.
Well, so on the episodes that I've been on so far, I've acknowledged that these albums have been good so far. They haven't really grabbed me, though, the ones that we've talked about so far. I have to say, this first album really interests me, actually. It's pretty cool. It's really weird, honestly. I mean, I think that, am I going to say it's objectively better than some of the other ones? No, but I definitely enjoyed it a lot more. And that one, the second one, and the third one are the first albums I've ever bought with by April Wine. I just ordered them recently. Even though I've known this band for a while, these are the first ones that I'm buying. And so I think that, first off, I do like folksy kind of music, actually. I mean, I just went to go see Al Stewart last night. So, like, and I do, you know, I love bands like Fairport Convention and Incredible String Band and Steel Eye Span and stuff. So I like all that. I like psychedelia. I like hard rock. And this is a really cool album. It's kind of like a weird folk psychedelic hard rock, kind of like stoner rock kind of album. It definitely feels very early 70s. But they were adding some interesting elements in. I mean, Oceana, the first track, I love. It might be my favorite song on this album. It's so neat because it's like, it's an acoustic track. There's a lot of weird harmonies on this one. The vocals, it's almost haunting. It kind of sounds like Incredible String Band to me, and I absolutely love them. And so it's just a really haunting piece. It's a really interesting opener, especially from what we'll see later on with the band. Like, this was pretty experimental because they kind of become very predictable as time goes on. This isn't predictable at all. So I like that. Can't Find the Town is really beautiful. It's a good folksy type of song as well. So I really dig that one because it's just got like a sad, beautiful feel to it. Simple stuff. It's not real complex or anything. I mean, some of the other songs get a bit more interesting in that regard. Fast Train's pretty cool. It's got great riffs in it. It's got some cool acoustic parts as well. But when it goes into some of those riffs, they're heavy stuff, especially for 1971. That's one thing I will say about this album is that for 1971, there's some parts that are some of the heavier stuff that had been out at this point, which is interesting because I don't really think of April Wine as a particularly heavy band. I think we get some of their heaviest moments on this album, which is interesting too because there's 2 guitars versus 3. So 1 less guitar, but I think they make more of an impact with those guitars on this album at parts. There's some really cool melodic guitar parts through songs. Like I think on Oceana, there's some cool melodies and stuff, and they're on point. Like, it's just really stuff like that feels very advanced for a band at this time on their debut album to have those kind of cool melodies and stuff, especially in 71. They were a little ahead of their time because, I mean, Black Sabbath wasn't doing that kind of stuff at this point. Those like cool melodic guitar lines, you know. You guys mentioned Zeppelin. They weren't really doing that. They're doing power chords and pentatonic guitar solos. Like, so it's interesting that they were doing this at this point. I think that kind of ties into that folky feel a little bit. But like with electric guitars this time. Listen Mister's a cool song. It's not one of the better ones on here, but I still enjoy it. There's some good riffs on it, kind of some heavy sounds at times, an interesting vocal on it. Page 5 is insane. This song is nuts. Like, I'll be completely frank, I hadn't heard these albums until I started doing the homework for this. And when I first heard that song, I was in the car. And when it goes into that really fast, like bombastic electric guitar and the drums and everything, I went from like 35 miles per hour to like 50. It's just so energetic. Like, it's honestly overwhelming how heavy that is. And it's like, who else was doing stuff like that at this point? I mean, maybe a couple bands, but not really. So it's cool that they have that. And then it goes into Song for Mary. Oh, I have to say about page 5 too. Really interesting vocal on that one. It kind of has like a David Bowie kind of tonality to the vocals. And then one other thing I did want to mention about Oceana, actually, the guitars sound a lot like Velvet Underground on that song. And I love the Velvet Underground. They're one of my favorite bands. So when I heard that, I was like, that's pretty sweet, because that's not what we hear from April Wine as time goes on. So Song for Mary, beautiful song, kind of reminds me of like a Come Away Melinda type of feel, which is interesting because UFO covered that song on an album that's also very uncharacteristic of what they would go to sound like. So I kind of feel a parallel with that album and this, although I think this is a better album than the first UFO album, although I do like that quite a bit. But yeah, I love Song for Mary. It's a beautiful song, real mournful. Wench, actually, I think is probably the weakest track on this album for me. I do kind of hear the Led Zeppelin thing. It also sounds really unfocused. And this is the song where I hear they're just throwing stuff all over. The riffs are all over the place.
It's interesting because that's the only one that all 4 members of the band have writing credit on.
It sounds like 4.
Yeah.
It sounds like 4
like a
people
jam
that are
that got
writing credit on it. It's
I guess that's not good.
No, it feels very unfocused and stuff. It's almost not enjoyable to listen to, but there is some decent heavy riffs throughout it that kind of save it a little bit and some interesting melodies, but overall not really a great track. I like Time. The riff is really weird on this one because it has kind of like an old-timey 50s feel or something like that, and like the chords and like the strumming of it, almost kind of like when you hear bands like Roxy Music when they do weird stuff like that, trying to throw back with like old riffs or things like that. That's kind of what this sounds like to me. It's not like an amazing song, but I think it's cool and it's a decent closer. But overall, this is my favorite of the April Wine albums we've listened to so far.
Wow.
I have at least liked all the albums so far. There isn't anything where I thought this is a bad album, but this is the first one that like really intrigued me. And that's why I ordered a copy of it along with some of the other early albums, just because I'm like, maybe there's more for me in this early era than the later stuff, or maybe in getting hooked in with this earlier stuff will help me appreciate the later stuff more. I think it's important to hear a band chronologically because you get context. So I don't know. I really like this album. If I'm going to rate it, I'm going to not be a douche and give it like a 5-star review because I think that wouldn't be fair. But I will say that I really enjoy it a lot. So I'm going to give it like a 4.25.
Wow.
Yeah, I really like this album.
But knowing that you're into folk rock and stuff like that, that totally makes sense. Why you gravitated towards this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I see it.
I mean,
Yeah,
I could
I
even
totally see it.
I could even probably go 4.5 because there's not really much I dislike on the album. I mean, I think that even though the production does sound old, but I think it's kind of in a cool lo-fi kind of way to where it doesn't sound horribly dated to me. Like, I mean, Velvet Underground's still cool now, and like that first song has that kind of feel in the tone. Listen Mister has a really cool chorus, kind of like a soulful feel to it. I think that ages fine. And I don't know, I think overall this is a pretty cool album. I enjoy it. And I also really enjoy On Record, but not quite as much. I also must say that I have to push down some of my other ratings of the other albums we've talked about so far, because I am not going to give this a 5-star. I think I gave First Glance a 9 originally. I'm
You
probably
like
going to
that
move.
one?
I'm going to move that to an 8. I'm going to move Power Play to like a 6.5. Nature of the Beast to 6, and
Harder, Faster.
Harder, Faster also like a 6.5. They might move up as time goes on, but that's just how I'm feeling now, because none of those albums could hook me in, except kind of First Glance. I did like that album.
Yeah.
But this album, On Record, it has some really strong moments, but it also has more songs on it than that first album. And I don't think that all these songs are top notch. So that's kind of why it gets the edge. I think that if this album would have been a bit more trimmed to not have some of the filler on it, I think that it would be a stronger album, because there's a better guitar sound on here. You could tell the production's better on this album, and some of the songwriting is better. It's definitely more focused, but I do think there's some weak tracks on here. I think Farkas is cool, and it's interesting if they start with a folky instrumental, because generally this album is not very folky at all, unlike that first one. That first one's really the folkiest so
like
far that I've seen we get from April 1. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then we go from Farkas into You Could Have Been a Lady, which is a Hot Chocolate cover. It's fire. It's so good. I mean, that guitar sound and the riffing and everything on here, even though it's a cover, I mean, they make it their own, and it just sounds absolutely amazing. Really great cover there. Believe in Me is a cool song. It's kind of experimental, even though it's kind of like a ballady type of thing. It's definitely softer and kind of emotional, but it has a real interesting sound to it, a big sound too. So I think that's a cool song. Work All Day is fire. That's got some great riffs on it and great guitar work once again. Drop Your Guns is pretty good. Bad Side of the Moon is good. I don't know. I think we could have gone with only having one cover on the album, honestly. I guess one probably. Refuge is a good track. I do like that one quite a bit. But I think Flow River Flow is a better one. That one kind of has a sort of poppy feel to it again. Not like pop, but kind of.
It's almost like an AM radio type of pop, but then it's also kind of like a late 60s kind of, it's almost a power pop song.
That's what I thought too. That's what I thought too. I was like,
it's very catchy.
Am I listening to the Raspberries again?
Right.
Because that's honestly what I thought. So I really like that song. I mean, I've been listening to the Raspberries a shit ton recently. So that was a welcome appearance there, having that kind of
it's a great track. It is a great track.
Yeah, and then Carry On's pretty cool too. And then I actually did like Didn't You as well. Which, yeah, I mean, that's another nicer kind of song in some ways. Really well done though. I think that they actually have some good kind of poppier moments. I mean, the hard rocking stuff is great too, but I think that honestly April Wine in some ways kind of excels at doing other stuff as well. I mean, like, I don't think that they're never just a hard rock band, but I think some of this experimentation they did early on pans out even better. I don't know, because the albums are a bit more experimental in general than what we get later on, so it kind of fits that they're a bit all over the place at times. But I like this album. I think that, like I said, the production's better on it. The guitar sounds definitely better on this album. I mean, it sounds top notch, honestly. I do like those little moments of like echoes or strings, whatever, between the songs. It just makes you
Yeah,
feel
I do
like you're
too. I like it.
it makes the album an experience more than just a compilation of songs, which is what some of the other albums feel like to me at times. This actually feels like I'm listening to an album experience, and I'm all about that with bands. I want to be on a journey when I'm listening to an album, not just listening to a compilation. But yeah, so I'm gonna give this, I would say, probably a 4. It's really good album. It's not quite as good as that first one. The first one I really like. I like the folky elements. I like the kind of like stonery type of thing that like the Black Sabbathy type of sound at times, that jamminess. I like the overall songs on it. I think that it's a really interesting one-off kind of thing, just like those early Mick Bolton UFO albums. I love that stuff. Not going to say it's as good as the Shankers stuff. This one, I think actually, I think it's my favorite I've heard by the band. Well, that might change over time, but we'll see. So yeah, so for the first album, I'm giving it a 4.5. This one on record, I'm giving it a 4. Both very strong albums.
The way you were talking about the second record, I thought you almost were going to give it a higher review.
Oh yeah.
Well, it sounded like you really liked it.
I like it, but I don't think it's as good as the first one. I like that darker tone of the first one too. It's a really it's a really murky album, and like, I don't know, you once again it kind of takes you on a journey more so than it just being a album. And it's very, I almost feel like it's a little bit of head of the game in some ways. Not that it's like it reinvented the wheel, but it was heavy for its time.
Excellent review, for crying out loud.
Yeah, that's really good. I never thought I'd hear such high praise on those first 2 albums. But that's why we do this. I can't wait.
That's why we do this.
I can't wait till we do Whole World's Going Crazy and Forever for Now, what Ryan thinks of those albums.
Oh boy.
Heck, I can hardly wait for Electric Jewels and Stand Back.
Yeah, but they get more eclectic on those latter
I know.
2.
It's going to be interesting. I can hardly wait to get everyone's view on those.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, I mean, I didn't have the second album, but yes, I did. I have it on vinyl, the US pressing on Big Tree.
The one with that cover?
I've got that original pressing, but I'd never listened to the first album or really listened to any of the early stuff. So this is like a new exploration for me as well.
Apparently I gotta listen to them more.
I've been listening to them all week, and I like them the more I listen to them. I swear to God, it starts getting into your bloodstream. I don't know. You could have been a lady. I've been singing it to myself all week. I know that's not a Miles Goodwin song, but
no, they definitely made it their own. And
they made it their own.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yep.
Ryan, what were you going to say?
One more thing. I also must say that I am a sucker for really like weird and bad album covers. So I love that first album cover. It's so tacky and strange. I don't know. I do like that. I'm excited for my copy to come in the mail tomorrow.
I am glad they never went with that logo.
That is so old.
It's so bad.
I don't know how else to say it. It's so old.
So Ryan, did you say you ordered the Aquarius CD or did you get the Unidisc CD?
I think I got Aquarius. It's from '98, and then the second album, the pressing's from 2009.
I have to say that these Unidisc CDs sound pretty damn good.
Yeah, the only drawback of those, the only ones I have of those are the live albums, because that's the only time they ever came out on CD, is that they're in digipacks. That's the only drawback. Now, the Aquarius reissues, the crappy thing about them is that there's nothing in the middle. Like, this is all the studio albums are the exact same. It just has all their studio albums listed. So
the Unidisc for the second record, it's got a jewel case. Is that
Yeah.
what you've got, John? What one do you have?
What I picked up, this was, of course, that's the first one. So yeah, that was a
Aquarius.
and then that was also an Aquarius.
Yeah, that's the CD I have too.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Electric Jewels was a digipack.
That's a Unidisc one then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great we've got people buying these albums. That's awesome.
This is unbelievable. I just don't know what to even say.
This one is a Wounded Bird reissue.
Oh, that's the one you want.
Yeah, I'd like to have that one because it actually. Well, I mean, I have the record.
Show the back of that too.
Okay,
show the back of Stand Back.
Okay, so
I've never seen the Wounded Bird.
So
one.
Okay. So that's that.
What's the CD look like?
It's got the back of it's got the picture of the band, and then there's like a crowd.
Purple. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to get that. I have the Aquarius version of that.
Yeah, and then
it
sounds all right.
The Aquarius version just has, if anybody's curious, just a white background with the song titles in black. That's it.
It's horrible.
Yeah. But
I don't remember if I got this on Amazon or if I got this on Discogs.
Yeah.
But I got it from one of those.
If anyone's curious.
Where'd you get I'm sorry. Where'd you get Electric Jewels from? Because I've been looking for that, but I don't see it on Amazon.
Let me do some looking because I don't remember off the top of my head. Let me look at my Discogs.
Seems hard to find. There's also what was the German label?
Repertoire?
Yes.
Yeah, Repertoire issued on but Repertoire issued on record and Electric Jewels like way back in the early 90s.
I wonder what those sound like.
I don't know. I like the idea of getting the CDs by them that aren't on Aquarius.
You want to kind of avoid the Aquarius ones, kind of.
Yeah. And if anybody's curious, like I said, the second album, the song titles are in a different order. Kind of. It's like the middle of the album. So the Canadian version of the album is Farkas, You Could Have Been a Lady, Believe in Me, Work All Day, Drop Your Guns. That's side one. Side two is Bad Side of the Moon, Refuge, Flow River Flow, Carry On, and Didn't You. The U.S. version is Farkas, You Could Have Been a Lady, Believe in Me, Drop Your Guns, Refuge. And side two is Work All Day, Bad Side of the Moon, Flow River Flow, Carry On, and Didn't You. So it's like the middle three or four songs they mixed up for some reason.
Okay, to answer your question, I picked up Electric Jewels off of Amazon from a third-party guy. And I believe, and this one is apparently an import. So I think I got this from a guy in England or Europe or something.
Yeah, what label is that on? Does it say?
It looks like it's got the Unidisc.
It's Unidisc, yeah. So it would have come from Canada originally, because yeah. Unidisc is interesting because they got the rights to reissue a bunch of CDs from a few smaller labels, Aquarius being one of them. But they also got the rights to issue albums that were on Mirage, which was a short-lived division of Atlantic Records. So they've reissued some of the early Whitesnake albums too, which is kind of cool. I don't have any of them because I've got them all already, but it is possible, once again, you can go in stores in Canada and find like Ready and Willing and Live in the Heart of the City. And I love that early stuff. So
I just wonder what they sound like, or if they're digital clones of.
The live albums sound pretty good. I was excited when they came out, like One for the Road, Live at the Alma Combo, because they'd never been on CD before. And they actually both added tracks to the listings, which is kind of cool. That's the one thing I wish Unidisc had done, because we talked about this before. There's stray B-sides out there from April Wine, studio songs that have never been on CD, and that would have been the best time to put them out.
And they should have been on the box set too.
Oh, the box set is awful. Like zero imagination gone into that. I have such problems with that.
You think it would be complete with everything, but whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't ask us to compile it.
They didn't ask us to compile it, but that's also why I like to find the CDs that aren't on Aquarius.
So you would recommend getting the live albums that are on Unidisc then? Those all you can
get? That's all you can get them on. They were on Aquarius on like record and cassette, but they were never on CD until the Unidisc reissue series. I don't know if they're still actively in print or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked.
But there's the live, it's just called Live from 74. And then there's Live at the Alma Combo from 77 and One for the Road from 85, which is my favorite.
Yeah. I still recommend anyone get that
Oh, the King Biscuit, the
King
Biscuit.
Biscuit Flower.
We got it.
album.
We
Yes,
we
it's
should do
great.
one episode on just their live albums, but
Yeah, we
that's
can do that. That'll be
yeah.
the last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised for a band like that. I know we're just kind of shooting the shit, but how many live albums they have out?
I can think of 5.
It
Right.
just seems like that's a lot. I mean, I'm all for it. I'm not
Yeah.
questioning it, I'm not
There's
critiquing them but the King Biscuit one's a great one.
5 different ones with 4 different lineups. So like the first album, 1974, that's the Electric Jewels tour. So that's the Electric Jewels lineup. Live at the Elma Combo, I guess it would have been the same lineup
line.
because they
Yeah.
hadn't gotten Brian Greenway yet.
Nope.
The cool story behind that is that they were sort of clandestine opening for people didn't know they were opening for the Stones. That's the story behind that. And actually, the Stones, I think it's called Love You Live, just got
That's
reissued.
right. And
That
that's
was
from that
recorded at the
show.
same time as Live at the Elma Combo. And then One for the Road is like the Nature of the Beast lineup. That's sort of their best known lineup. And so is the King Biscuit Flower Hour. And then they did a latter day one in like 2003. It's a 2-disc one I think it's called Greatest Hits Live. And that was actually that brief period when they had Carl Dixon from Coney Hatch on a second guitar and keyboards, which unfortunately I've seen April Wine more than any other band. And I'm a huge Coney Hatch fan too. And I never saw that lineup. That kind of sucks.
That's another band I would like to go down and throw those albums out to people to check out and review.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because Coney Hatch, phenomenal band that doesn't get much love.
No.
And that's
I had Andy
I'm writing
Curran
that down.
on
I'm
my
writing
show
that
not
down.
too long ago. He was a super nice guy. Super nice guy. I met Carl Dixon too. I saw him do an acoustic show in 2005. He was super cool too. But great band and should have been huge. Because they had that right combination of being like really hard rock, but they were really melodic too.
And all that stuff's available on Rock Candy, all those Coney Hatch CDs.
Except their comeback album 4, which came out on Frontiers. I don't know if that's still in print or not, but
I don't think that's in print anymore.
no, and that was a good one too. Like
it's out there though.
Yeah, it's out. You can get used copies. But yeah, the Rock Candy, Rock Candy tends to do a pretty good job with them. It's too bad Rock Candy didn't get a hold of some of these April Wine albums now that I think about it. Especially the ones that had associated B-sides. I can only assume that Capitol Records or whatever wanted too much money.
Could see that.
I don't know, but I think they deserve. Well, John's got a couple of those CDs that are like twofers, right?
Yeah.
Don't you have like a twofer?
Those are BGO.
I don't know what those sound like, but BGO usually pretty decent. But are there any liner notes or
there's
anything?
There's that one. There's the Forever Now.
Oh, look, there you go.
Yeah.
John's got all of it.
I've been going nuts. Yeah, my wife's probably not liking me for that. Yeah, there's
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a BGO. Yeah, I didn't think it sounded all that bad. I think that was the other BGO.
Yeah.
I mean, are there any decent liner notes in there or anything? I don't know. Or is it pretty stark? Bare.
I think you have Stephen King's It as the liner notes in this one.
Maybe.
Stuck.
I just think that I think it'd be wonderful if they could get like a reissue campaign.
They deserve.
That's better than what they've had before.
Yeah, I've got a couple of I've actually got 3 REO Speedwagon ones with their early albums. They've got 2 on because long story short, in order to get all the albums on CD, I had to buy 3 of those twofers, even though I had 2 of the albums, but it's just the way that they put them together. And I've also got Sammy Hagar Loud and Clear, his live album, BGO. I've got actually about a bunch of his albums on BGO, like Street Machine and 9 and a 10 scale. The early Capitol ones, again, Capitol Records.
Yeah, I've got the original Street Machine. What are the 2 live albums that from that era?
All Night Long and Live 1980.
I've got the Capitol version of that.
Oh, awesome. That's the only Capitol CD.
Wait a minute. Was that a Capitol one? Or 9 out of... Wait a minute. What were the ones that came out the same
So
time?
9
Tell
and a
me
10
again.
scale, then self-titled or the red album, everything's red on the cover, musical chairs. Then there was All Night Long, which was called Loud and Clear in the UK. It's the same
Okay,
album.
All Night Long, I think's on One Way, I think.
That's the version I have of that one and Live 1980. It says Capitol Records on it, but One Way Records is the reissue label.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only original Capitol CD of his that I have is Rematch. It's actually called Rematch and More.
Yeah, I've
on
got
CD.
the Live 1980 on Capitol, and I've got Street Machine on Capitol.
See, those were by the time I started buying CDs, those were so far out of print. I did well to find the cassettes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But musical chairs, good luck. I mean, it's out there on Capitol, but good luck.
Yeah, yeah. So most of my old Sammy Hagar ones are all BGO records.
And all those came out around the same time.
Yeah.
That all those original April Wine US
all
pressings
92, 93, 94. Yeah.
And they just kind of came out and,
they deserve a better reissue campaign than what they've received.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you get Frigate there.
I was gonna say, Tim, and you said this is a tough one to come by.
I think it's way out of print now.
Yeah, I found this at a store here in town.
See, that's really
for $3, and I thought, hey, I'm gonna grab
that one.
it.
And Attitude were never released in the States officially, so they must have found their way.
And
down
I think, yeah, I can't read the label that's on this one. Free
FRE, yeah, that stands for Flood Ross Entertainment.
Yeah, that's it.
It was a short-lived EMI in Canada distributed them. The first one of those, Attitude, actually went gold here in Canada. It did fairly well, and then the very next year they put that Frigate out, and it didn't do anything.
Yeah, those are
out of print.
Those last three of the four studios, those are going to be. I'm going to try and see if I can find them somehow, but if not, I'll just get them on Spotify or something. But yeah, that's I was lucky to find Frigate. I thought I'm going to grab that one while I got it. So.
Yes.
Well, I have to hand it to John. He's got a lot more than I do. I've just been trying to piecemeal them together. So, but I do have Stand Back. I just don't have. I've never heard Electric Jewels.
Discogs became my best friend. I found a lot of good versions of it, and so that's where it's helping me. So
the weird thing with me is, like I said, showed you these. I collect the variants of April Wine cassettes, and there are a lot of them in Canada alone because they were such a big band up here. I've done a whole episode on my April Wine cassette collection because it's kind of insane. Like, I think I've got 12 copies of The Nature of the Beast from all over the world. I don't know why. They're the only band I do that with, like those variants. But I think it's just because I remember distinctly going into a store and they had all these reissues of these April Wine albums, and every one of them looked the same. And I couldn't believe how many different albums they had. I thought I knew what their albums were, but I didn't. So
I had the first 6 coming in the mail.
That's awesome, man. I love that.
God.
I love that.
Where did you get Electric Jewels from? You're on mute. Amazon?
Amazon, yeah.
Huh, all right. I guess I'll look again. Maybe I overlooked it.
And I just saw earlier this week at one of my favorite record stores to go to, it's about 3 hours away from here, said that they had Attitude on LP. So somebody must have gotten the rights to reprint those early 90s albums because they were never on vinyl. So I saw that and I'm like, yeah, there's something else I got to get.
Damn completists.
That's awful.
It's a terrible sickness.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up. I'm just going to say, I'm not going to go. You guys did such a wonderful job on looking at these records. The first album, I just want to say, it just seems kind of like they don't really know what they're doing. It's just a collection of songs. Where the second album, not only do we get better production, and no one mentioned that Terry Brown's the engineer on the second album.
That's right. Yeah,
I wanted to, but yeah.
And this is why it sounds so much better.
Now it does. It's not masterfully produced, but it's better. You can tell they had more of a budget for it.
More of a budget. And I think the tracks are stronger. It sounds more like a cohesive album. Is it the extra work that Ralph Murphy did with the little interludes in between? I don't know. But I really like the second album quite a bit. I would probably give the first album, I don't think I would give it a solid 3 stars because I really like it. The thing that does bother me, it doesn't bother me, but we're talking 1971, but I swear to God, this record sounds like 1968. There's nothing about it that, I mean, there are other albums because, look at Led Zeppelin 4. They're way out there. This is almost like they're stuck in 1968. It's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but that's what I hear. And Oceana, I just want to say it is very psychedelic to some degree, but if you put Tony Iommi on there and Ozzy singing, you would have a Black Sabbath song. It would be a perfect Black Sabbath track. I swear to God, that's what I hear in it. And I don't know if it was Ryan that heard that. Someone mentioned it, but I totally hear that. And then Can't Find the Towns, kind of like a Jethro Tull thing. I mean, they have a lot of different influences.
Yeah.
And it's just not cohesive. But I'll tell you, this Unidisc CD sounds fine. I have no trouble with the thing. But
also, something else that's kind of admirable
Mhm.
now that I think about it, about that first album, is that there are no covers on it. They did a lot of covers throughout their career. Now, I think they picked good covers to do, but there are no covers on that first album, that's pretty admirable.
That's another thing
good.
I like about it, honestly. And I will say, Grant, I agree that the production sounds kind of late 60s, but I don't think all the songwriting does to me. I think that it's more so the production that might date
It's
it
got
a
that
little bit.
tonality.
Yeah.
Which
I think that's down to
that's
dollars
just
and being on a
nitpicky.
small label than anything. Because the story of April Wine is that they so they formed in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Eastern Canada, and if you wanted to get anywhere, in Canada at that time, you either had to go to Montreal or Toronto. So my understanding is that they sent like ads everywhere. They called people, or they, and they got basically a letter back from this club in Montreal that they took as an invitation to come play. And what it was actually a very nicely worded sort of "don't call us, we'll call you" letter. But they packed up, the four of them packed up and moved to Montreal, and the club owners felt bad when they got there, so they let them play. And it was like sort of by complete luck that they met the two guys who would become their management, and they kind of went from there, because a lot of people think of them as being based in Montreal, because for their biggest years of their career, they were based in Montreal. But out here in the East, like, we kind of claim them, eh? Back East.
Well, hey. So what did I say? I gave the first album 3 stars. I'm
Yeah.
going to give On Record 3.5, I think.
Fair.
Wow, I was the harshest on these two. That's interesting.
Oh, that's okay. I'll tell you, the more I listen to On Record, the more it gets under my, it's great. I like the way,
interesting
I
because
like the
these are-
sequencing of it. I mean, no, it's not April Wine that we're used to.
No.
Yeah.
But I kind of look at this whole era as a separate entity than
I think
what
you kind of have
we
to,
would-
but it's just interesting because these CDs have been in my collection for almost 30 years. They've just been sitting there waiting for me to rediscover them.
And I think I'm like Ryan. The more I listen to the first album, it'll probably grow on me. And
you just got to sit down with it for a week and just
really just dig into it. I mean, that,
Yep.
and like I said, the second, On Record obviously latched on to me a lot faster than the first one did. But I certainly can agree with what Ryan was saying, because I think I could see it. I could see it growing on me some more.
I think if you look at that
There you
first album, is kind of like your early UFO albums, those first two, Dash, Lonesome Crow by Scorpions. If
And
you put it in that kind of
we're
area,
right in the same time period too.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, I
Yeah.
think those first UFO albums were 70 and 71. Lonesome Crow is 72, and then this album's 71. So
They're right in
like
between.
all right there. They're all weird one-off or two-off albums. Kind of Fly the Rainbow by Scorpions as well, but not quite as much. That one moves on a bit from where the first album's a Connie Plank produced krautrock album that's pure psychedelia. I think if you throw this album in there,
Mhm.
I think that's where it's kind of interesting to me that it is so different and it actually goes into some influences that interested me a bit more. So
Isn't that something like you mentioned? So you mentioned UFO, Scorpions, and April Wine, and geographically they're nowhere. None of the like none of
Miles
them are
apart.
close, and it's not like this is pre-internet days. It's not like they would have heard each other.
yeah.
It's
Yeah, and it's not
kinda
even that these
wild.
are all exactly the same sounding albums. I mean, I don't
Kinda.
think that, yeah, but like, I think this April Wine one and the UFO sometimes have some parallels, although I think this is much more folky than UFO's early stuff. Their early stuff is very dumb space rock, but I like it. But it's dumb. Like it's not,
I like
it's
it, but
not,
it's dumb.
I like it though, because it's heavy and it's very charming and it's just fun music.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of psychedelic, kind of trippy and stuff, but it's not like they reinvented the wheel. I guess that's where I'm going with it. And same with April Wine here. I don't think they did anything groundbreaking, but I think that
No.
it is a very fun and underrated early 70s release.
And just jumping ahead, I just picked up Attitude off Discogs.
Jesus, look, you guys
You're gonna
are
have the whole
just-
collection here.
You
Before.
guys are
I'll-
like machines.
The ones that here's the thing, those last two albums
Mhm.
on Discogs,
Yeah.
not cheap.
Back to the Mansion and Roughly Speaking.
I've never even
were
ever seen them anywhere ever. I've
were
never
Yeah.
seen a
not
physical
widely
copy.
distributed, even when they first came out. They were
Yeah.
on small labels, and yeah, I got them when they first came out. Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah,
I lucked out with Attitude. I got it for about, I think with shipping and handling, about $10.
Yeah, that's
wow.
fair. That's
So-
fair for it. I think that's what I
So-
spent for it.
So yeah, I have a feeling those last two I'll probably just wind up downloading and just go with that. And if I can find a good copy somewhere, then I'll snag them. But yeah, that's gonna be pretty tough. I
Alright.
have a feeling.
Well, there we go, kids. We've got ratings on these records all over the place. Well, fair to good. No 5-star records here, but I didn't expect that. But a lot of great reviews. I appreciate everybody coming on. Does anybody have anything coming up that they need to plug or anything?
I mean, my channel is Ryan's Final Destination. It's also a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, etc. But one thing I do want to plug is September 1st. I have an episode called Zero the Hero. It's the first one of a series where we're talking about only movies that have 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the first one is going to be Jaws the Revenge. I'm doing it with Davy from Davy's Cinema Flicks Music Picks. We've been putting a lot of work into it, having meetings, planning it out and stuff. So come check it out. It's going to be a real good time.
Excellent. Tim Derling, what about you? Anything coming up?
Well, my channel is Tim's Vinyl Confessions, and if you're an April Wine fan watching this, if you type in Tim's Vinyl Confessions, April Wine, I've done plenty of episodes in this band. Got one coming up in the next couple of months. And I've got a pretty cool one coming up on actually a couple different ones on sort of rare out of print CDs, because I know people are into nitpicky stuff like that.
Ooh, I love
So
that
yeah,
stuff.
Tim's Final Confessions on YouTube, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram under that name. On Twitter, I'm Tim's Vinyl, and love to hear the feedback. And I'm on the Contrarians from time and again, and Rush fans. And I've been, I haven't been on John's channel yet, but I've been on Ryan's and I've been on Grant's plenty of times. Love doing these April Wine discussions, and yeah,
Mhm.
this has been another good one. I really like digging into these first two albums.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Mr. Klauser.
Yeah. I'll work on that, Tim. We'll do something on my channel one of these
for
days.
sure.
It'd be a lot of fun. So we just talked Ryan and I just talked about my little DIY CD I did with just some songs that I've written over the years. So that was a lot of fun to talk because I don't ever get a chance to talk about songs I've written. So that's and recorded. So that was always kind of cool. I've actually got something in the works for this Saturday. It just kind of came together really quickly. Me and a couple of the guys that I did we did an Iron Maiden openers favorite list. So there's 3 guys from there who we got talking back and forth, and we got talking about a particular year, and they were like, "Hey, wow, this came out this year. So did this one. Oh yeah, this one came. Oh, this one." So we're gonna have a talk about a particular year. Not gonna give it away just yet. You'll see. But we're gonna record that one on Saturday. It'll be 4 of us. We got one guy's actually up in Canada. I believe he said he's outside of Toronto somewhere, but I don't remember. But and the other guys actually live here in Alabama. They're about 2 hours away from me. So, but I've known these guys for a long time. So, looking forward to that. Other than that, man, I am like wide open. I did put a video out for anybody who loves blues. I gave you a little tour of the Robert Johnson graves markers. I also showed off the Charlie Patton grave marker, and there was also a harmonica player that I can't think of his name off the top of my head. And I kind of walk around the BB King grounds of the museum out there, which is, if you ever get down to the Mississippi area, especially where BB King's museum is in Indianola, highly recommend going through it. It's great. Delta Blues Museum in Clarksdale is great to go through. Picked up a couple vinyls when I was at the Delta Blues Museum. I've been wanting to get some Robert Johnson on vinyl. And I finally did. I don't have it handy to reach, but they had the complete recordings, and then there was also a kind of a 78 replica that they did for Record Store Day a couple of years ago of Terraplane Blues, and I thought I wanted to get this one too. So
how cool is that?
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. I've been wanting to get some of that on vinyl. Obviously I can't afford the original 78s if you can ever find one.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I think I've seen one on eBay. It's like $5,000 or something like that. No, thank you. I don't have a 78 player to play it on anyway. So anyway, my music corner, that's me. You can see me on. I've been around, but I just haven't been on anything in a while. So there you go.
Cool. Well, there you go. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody coming on. A great discussion. Yeah. We will stick on here and we'll pick our next date for September. So, well, of course we're not live anyway. What the hell? I'm so used to going live all the time. So anyway, I appreciate you guys coming on. Thanks a lot.
People not watching don't know that.
I know they don't. All right. Good night, guys. Thank you very much. All right.